So hello and welcome everyone to today's talk, Beating the Winter Blues, 7 Easy Steps to a Better Mood with Food. This is Vanessa Rodriguez with Unveiled Wellness, and I'm super excited that you've joined me today and taken some time out in your busy week right before the holidays. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to teaching you loads of info on this important topic. From a case of being hangry, so that's hungry and angry for those of you who are not familiar, to seasonal affective disorder, to full-blown depression, food has a profound impact on our mood. Currently, depression is the leading cause of disability in the US, and with new studies showing links between fast junk food and mood disorders such as depression and anxiety, it's time to take back our health, starting with our forks, and that's one of the biggest reasons why I decided to do this today. So in this talk, you'll learn about the relationship between our food and mood, as well as easy ways to address mood challenges. So just so you know, today's talk is going to go about 45 minutes long, and I'm leaving some time at the end for some Q&A afterward using the chat box below if you're on my website. And if you're on Google Hangouts, I'll try to activate that Q&A afterward and jump between both of those. But just a quick note, I won't be able to give my full attention to the chat boxes until the end of the talk. So if you can jot down any questions that may come up on a notepad and then ask them toward the end, that would be awesome. And for now, I encourage you to grab some tea or a glass of water, get rid of any other distractions, so close out those other tabs, stop anything else that you're doing, unless of course you're driving, and in that case, please be very careful. I don't advocate taking notes and driving, just for the record. But this is super important stuff, and I'll be covering a lot, so make sure to give it your full attention. And I'm going to try to go as moderately paced as I can, but there's a lot that I want to get in here, so I might talk a little fast, but just know that this is going to be recorded and you can watch the replay also if you miss something, so don't worry about that. Just be very present and channel your inner student, get curious, and take some notes. So also, if you can stay with me until the end, I have a special bonus for all of you who can. So let's get started. Okay, so today we're going to talk about a lot of things, but first we're going to start off with identifying what mood swings, depression, and anxiety are, so you can recognize them. And then we're going to look at personal risk factors for yourself and what's wrong with our diets, specifically as it relates to the American diet. And then we're going to dive into 3 big causes of mood swings, depression, and anxiety with nutrition implications. And also, I'll give you some tools that will help alleviate those symptoms. And of course, after all that information, I'm going to give you 7 simple ways to regulate your mood using nutrition. So I want to introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Vanessa Rodriguez. I'm the owner of Unveiled Wellness, which is a health coaching practice in Chicago, and I'm your teacher today. I'm a certified holistic health counselor practicing whole foods functional nutrition with a focus on food as medicine. And I help very busy, go-getting women and a few good men who are experiencing health challenges ranging from digestive problems, which I'm seeing a lot of these days, food sensitivities, energy and hormone issues, as well as a focus on disease prevention. So together, we work to unveil a roadmap to health that's unique for each person. And we do that through one-on-one counseling, customized programs, and some digital e-programs that I created. But it's my mission as your coach to help you achieve many things, such as digging to get to the root of a health issue and dropping that cycle of on-again, off-again dieting, and ultimately using food as medicine. So some of you may know me and may be familiar with my story, but I want some background on where I come from and why I became so passionate about this work. Well, my interest in integrative nutrition and holistic health began when my mom, Norma, here, was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2005. And there was no history of breast cancer in our family. My mom was the first. So you can imagine the confusion, shock, and the frustration that this brought out. I witnessed the debilitating effects of cancer and conventional treatment, as some of you may be familiar with or have seen with people who you love or yourself. But I was also able to see the healing power of nutritious foods and a well-balanced lifestyle, which we started, just playing around and experimenting to help her out. And it really gave her back a quality of life that she had lost with cancer and treatment. And I not only saw the positive effects of nutritious healing foods on my mom, but I saw remarkable results within my own life, because as a family, we really ventured into this healthy eating together. And I lost weight effortlessly. I gained a ton of energy. I got rid of my asthma, which I had since a child, my chronic acid reflux and indigestion, which I thought was my fate for the rest of my life. All these things my mom also had. So I thought that they were my genetic fate. And here I am, poof, years later, and it's all gone. So it was just such a learning curve for me and a really brilliant experience. So after 5 years with breast cancer, my mom, Norma, passed away in January of 2010. And this experience was the most difficult and transformative in my life. It taught me many things and really was the catalyst for what I do today. And there are many lessons that I learned from her journey. And today I would love to share a few of those with you. And on the screen here, I have some of those. And really, it's about owning our health and being our own advocates and knowing that food really is medicine, that every day truly is precious. So we better live like we mean it, and that we can't do it alone. And so my intention for my work and with classes is to share my education and my knowledge so that you can not only end your frustration with food and your health and change your relationship with them, but to also maybe make some real changes and changes that are sustainable and lasting. So that's enough about me and my story. So I want to dive in because there's a lot of info that we need to cover. So first, we need to get real, because America has a really big problem. And, in the winter time, we have seasonal affective disorder, the winter blues, as we call it. But really, there's an overarching mood problem that America has. And depression, as I mentioned, is the leading cause of disability. And there's an economic burden, not just emotional. In 2013, we spent $112 billion on depression. That's incredible. And 80% of depressed people are impaired in daily functioning, meaning that they can't engage in the things they love, like playing with their kids or pursuing their dreams or studies. And we're 100 times more depressed now than we were in 1900. 100 times more depressed. And about 10 million Americans are affected by seasonal affective disorder. And then an additional 10 to 20% experience mild SAD. So we're going to use SAD to talk about seasonal affective disorder. And it's usually more women than men. And that's a common theme that we're going to see throughout here with mood disorders. So here's some more statistics. 50% of Americans are experiencing depression. 50% of Americans. And the anxiety disorders are the most common mental illness currently in the US. That's 40 million adults, and again, more women than men. And of course, there's a genetic potential that we all have, some more than others, for these mood disorders and issues, but they're triggered by physiological impacts. So I'm talking about stress and trauma, and that can mean emotional and outside stress, and also internal stress and physiological and biological stress. And expression really depends on diet. So that's the first place that we want to look at. So let's take a look at depression. So severe symptoms of depression can include thoughts of wanting to hurt yourself and moments where you cannot get off the couch, you have no motivation, feelings of apathy and helplessness and hopelessness. However, not all cases of depression are this obvious, and there are people out there who live with a low-grade depression. And that means that they're still functioning and they have relationships and jobs. However, life doesn't have that same zest to it as if they weren't in a low-grade depression. And so they might experience things like having to push themselves extra hard to get motivated. They don't find too many things interesting. They may eat less or more than they should on a regular basis, find themselves irritated with others easily, and may get bored a lot or find it difficult to engage in activities, and often have low self-esteem, and that doesn't seem to change. When we look at anxiety, anxiety is a form of stress. So we all have some anxiety. It's instinctual. It's activated by the oldest part of the brain, the area in charge of fight or flight. And because of that, anxiety can be very useful. It can inform us if we are in a dangerous situation, and we need that, right? However, for many people, their anxiety has crossed the boundary of normal anxiety levels. So extreme forms of anxiety include obsessive thoughts or compulsive behaviors, panic attacks, and phobias. And people who have experienced a trauma, such as an assault or a car accident, might experience post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. However little, traumas also affect us deeply and can cause someone to feel anxious. Things that happen in our childhood may not seem like a big deal, but they do affect us. And when a child's cortisol levels remain engaged, the brain becomes very accustomed to operating this way. It becomes their normal state of mind. And this is why someone who feels anxious might feel like they feel that way all the time and worry about everything. Anxiety also has a very physical connection. So during moments of anxiety, the stress hormone cortisol is elevated. And the elevated cortisol levels causes imbalance in blood sugar level and insulin, which leads to mood swings. So we're going to talk about that in just a moment. So let's take a look at mood swings. So mood swings have a genetic component. Manic swings can be relatively mild to very severe, and very severe swings can include thoughts of wanting to hurt other people and extremely risky behaviors. These are things like, prostitution. So most people don't have this. This is very extreme. But what most people have if they experience these is cyclothymic mood swings or hypomania. So in these cases, the mood swings can be difficult to see and understand because they're not quite as clear. So mood swings in these situations can mean periods of staying up all night, moments of getting a ton done, having problems focusing, engaging in small risky behaviors. That can still cause trouble, so things kind of like gambling, for instance. And usually it's behaviors that don't feel normal and might cause someone to not recognize who he or she was the past few days or weeks. So let's take a look at some personal risk factors as it relates to these mood disorders. So indicators that there could be an episode either in pregnancy or at some point in a person's life is a family history. So if you have a family history of it, a history of trauma in your life, a fragmented attachment to primary caregivers like your parents or grandparents or another relative or friend, unreasonably high expectations for yourself, difficulties adjusting to life's pulls and pushes, so the ebbs and flows of life, that roller coaster, you're not quite resilient to that, and lack of social support, and a pattern of strained or failed relationships in your life. And in pregnancy, specifically, having challenges with fertility can also be a red flag for postpartum depression later down the road. Okay, so that was a lot of information, and a lot of it can be overwhelming. So what the heck do we do about it? Well, the conventional way of looking at treating mood disorders, anxiety, or depression is treating the symptom and often medicating with drugs. But people don't have a Prozac deficiency. So, what are they doing really? Well, there can be many different reasons for the manifestation of pain, mood, and a symptom. And we want to find out what is causing it at the root. So, here are some firefighters trying to put out a fire, but that's not really going to work until you get rid of that crazy pyromaniac on the left-hand side who's setting fire to the house, right? So, for example, antidepressant medications called selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. Those are SSRIs. Those are a very common kind of antidepressant medication. What they do is increase serotonin levels to correct a chemical imbalance in the brain. But why is that imbalance there in the first place? And even more so, is there an imbalance at all? So really, we got to look at other things in our lives. And the first place that we need to look at is our diet. And we want to take a look at how diet is related to America's depression problem. So let's do that. Okay, so studies are showing that there is a direct link with fast food and baked goods, for example, with depression and mood disorders. But many of us crave these processed or sugary foods, and they seem to make us feel better, right? But it's actually a part of a terrible cycle, worsening the mood dysregulation. So let's take a look at why. So earlier I stated that 50% of Americans over the age of 14 experience depression or anxiety. All of us have the genetic potential for negative mood triggered by stress and trauma, and most importantly, amplified by diet. So this is a quick snapshot of what our current diet in America looks like. So standard American diet, ironically, also abbreviated to SAD, and it's 63% processed foods. So added fats, oils, sugars, refined grains. So it contributes to our emotional health problem because the SAD diet is deficient in nutrients. We need nutrients for emotional balance. And in fact, the first symptoms of malnutrition is emotional imbalance. Since we are eating more processed foods than anything else, we're also consuming a ton of chemicals and GMO foods. So GMO are genetically modified organisms. And that means that the genetics of that food have been altered, and oftentimes they'll take, a gene from an animal and they put it into a vegetable, for example, in order to take certain aspects and characteristics of that animal and incorporate it into the vegetable. Sounds like sci-fi, but it happens and it's real and it's in most processed foods. So this is not natural food, right? It has highly addictive sweeteners, such as sugar and corn syrup, and we're talking about the SAD diet here. And most SAD food is laden with bad fats. And fats in general have been given a bad rap, right? So there was a point where there was the whole low-fat, non-fat diet craze. Well, what's happening there is we're not consuming the bad fats, but we're not consuming the good fats either. And you're going to see in a moment how important fat is for our brain and thus emotional health. Another thing that we're missing is that lack of support and tools. We literally live in a world that is working against healthy eating. And so it's really tough to stick with it, I'm sure, as many of you have experienced in your life. But let's take a look at some culprits as it relates to mood swings, depression, and anxiety. So stemming from our food problem in America, there are three major food culprits that I see of mood swings, depression, and anxiety. And I'm going to show you how the SAD diet relates to each of these specifically. So Today we're going to look at hypoglycemia, food intolerance, and then neurotransmitter dysfunction and gut dysbiosis. So if you're not familiar with these terms, that's okay. We're going to go through each one, starting with hypoglycemia. So hypoglycemia is really low blood sugar level. And here's a chart from Replenish PDX, which is an awesome nutrition group in Portland. And it shows what the healthy blood sugar range should look like. So it's more like peaks and valleys than mountains and ditches. And when you're in those mountains and ditches, that's the danger zone. And that's what happens when you're consuming simple carbs. So we're going to talk about this. So hypoglycemia occurs when your body's sugar, so it's also called glucose when it's in your body, is used up too quickly. Glucose is released into the bloodstream too slowly, and too much insulin is released into the bloodstream. So although it's most commonly known for occurring in people with diabetes, you may have heard a lot of talk about insulin as it relates to diabetes. It happens to non-diabetics very often, especially when there is a big fluctuation in blood sugar level. And if a person hasn't eaten for a long time, or if there is some stressor that increases cortisol, hypoglycemia can take effect. And actually, I have a tendency toward hypoglycemia pretty much all of my life. And so I would have bouts where I would get up and I'm super dizzy. I've had moments where I've fainted. And really what contributed to it were these main factors that I have on the screen, as well as my diet. So it's not just about what you are eating, it's also about how you are eating. Skipping meals, a high sugar diet, not eating enough food or eating the right amount of food during the meal, genetic tendency for low blood sugar, and definitely chronic stress can all contribute to hypoglycemia. And I had all of these. And I was addicted to sugar. And so I had this happen in my life. And I'm sure you guys know somebody, if not yourself, who experiences this as well. So some symptoms of hypoglycemia: double vision or blurry vision, pounding heartbeats, feeling nervous, having a headache, shakiness or trembling, trouble sleeping, unclear thinking. If you look at this list, it looks familiar, doesn't it? It kind of looks like a list of symptoms for anxiety, which is really interesting. And there is a high correlation with hypoglycemia and anxiety. And often people can seem like they have anxiety, and it's just a case of hypoglycemia. So if they get their hypoglycemia down, then their anxiety goes away. So I want you to think about these things and with yourself and the people in your life, and who's experiencing this, and are there simple things that they can do that we've already touched on to make those changes? So hypoglycemia can cause mood swings, which is most commonly defined as irritability, easily getting angry, and can extend into violent behavior. In fact, a majority of domestic violent cases can be attributed to hypoglycemia. And low energy phase caused by hypoglycemia can actually translate into a flat depression for some people. An increased reactiveness to stress, as well as bipolar disorder, can be traced back in part to hypoglycemic swings. So this is the title of a paper in the Journal of Neuropsychobiology that demonstrates the correlation between reactive hypoglycemia, so that's hypoglycemia that's happening real time for people, and the violent episodic behavior of violent offenders. So they looked at some violent offenders that were incarcerated. They would check their blood sugar levels and were diagnosed with hypoglycemia and watched their reactive hypoglycemia. And they found that it actually correlated with when they would have violent episodes. So think about the implications of this in society, let alone your life, right? And so some nutritional support to alleviate mood problems caused by hypoglycemia is eating meals with a low glycemic load. So here's a chart with some foods that are put according to their glycemic load. And glycemic load is a measurement of how quickly the carbohydrate in the meal got broken down into simple sugars and absorbed by the body. So the higher the glycemic load, the faster the absorption rate, which creates a big fluctuation in blood sugar level, causing it to first spike and then crash. Remember that mountain and that ditch. To create a meal with a low glycemic load, which will help balance blood sugar levels, if you consume grains, for example, try substituting refined grains with whole grains. So less processed here is the key. Include a generous amount of vegetables and good quality protein and good fats, which we'll talk about. And those can slow down the absorption of carbs. So you want to eat them all together. And to keep blood sugar level even, experimenting with having 5 to 6 small meals a day or snacks instead of 3 big meals. Now, there's a caveat with that because I feel that the optimal way to eat is with those individual meals with no snacking in between. However, if you are hypoglycemic or you have issues with blood sugar, you may not be able to do that right away. You might have to do these 5 to 6 small meals and work your way up, and that's totally okay. Start where you are. All right, so I'll be talking about other tips and steps that you can take to regulate your blood sugar, but let's move on to the second nutrition-related culprit of mood problems. So that was food intolerance. And today I'm going to focus on primarily gluten as it relates. Most studies are done on gluten so far, and it's seemingly prevalent food culprit as it relates to intolerance. And I'm often asked what I think about the gluten-free craze and if it's a fad. And I'm here to tell you that gluten intolerance, not just allergy, is a very real thing and affects many people. And there are food companies that are taking advantage of this and creating, quote unquote, gluten-free products that are pure crap, in my opinion, but touting themselves as healthy and confusing the public. And I don't agree with this, but they're making light of something that is actually a very serious problem. So for people who are gluten intolerant, they can suffer from mood problems, depression, and anxiety when they eat foods that contain gluten. There could often be a delayed reaction too, so it's a little harder to distinguish if it's the gluten or not, and you might not make that connection. And in children, this can also be expressed as learning disabilities or behavioral issues such as hyperactivity. And gluten can damage the brain and nerves of gluten-sensitive people. So the symptoms that occur through its functioning are brain-related and emotionally related. And one great way to figure out if you have any kind of issue related to gluten, if you have a gluten intolerance, is to eliminate it for a period of 3 weeks from your diet completely, and then challenge with it. So that means after the 3-week elimination, bring it into your meals and challenge it and see if it changes your mood, if it causes some kind of digestive issue or any health-related issue. So that's one really great way to do it if you can't afford testing. And then here I put a book by David Perlmutter, who is a renowned neurologist and doctor, and he wrote Grain Brain, which is all about how grain and gluten affects our brain function. And he's an expert in this, and it's a really great read. So I encourage you guys to check that out. And excuse me, it's not just gluten. So it can be other food offenders too, such as casein, which is found in dairy or corn. So I guess I should tell you what gluten is. Gluten is a protein that is found in certain grains, for example, wheat, barley, and rye. And so casein is the protein that's found in dairy. And oftentimes a phenomenon called cross-reactivity occurs. And this is when our bodies mistake a certain protein, such as gluten, for another protein, such as casein, which is found in dairy, and vice versa. So consuming either one of these foods can elicit a reaction as well, because you're inside your body, it's getting confused, and they look very similar at the molecular level. And here are just a few names of some studies on this very topic. And actually, you can find these yourself as well. You can either Google them or go onto PubMed, and those have publicly available studies, research studies and medical studies, and there's lots of information as it relates to gluten. So let's take a deeper look at this gut-brain connection that we're just touching upon, and we'll first look at what our brain requires from our diet to develop properly. Okay, so our brain depends on several things from our diet to develop and function properly. It requires neurotransmitters to transmit signals. And neurotransmitters are made up of amino acids, which come from protein in our food. The brain, therefore, is protein dependent. It needs amino acids, which makes up the protein, to manufacture these neurotransmitters. So one example of a neurotransmitter is serotonin, and I talked about that earlier in the presentation, and that's the feel-good neurotransmitter that many of us are familiar with, right? There are two sources of protein, animal and plant. And animal protein is the only high protein source with a complete profile of essential amino acids. So people who eliminate animal protein can suffer from neurotransmitter dysfunction if they're not careful to replace them with high quality and well-balanced plant protein sources. Neurotransmitters that regulate mood also regulate our appetite. So there's another connection there. When we become deficient in our neurotransmitters, we start craving. We start craving carbs, and we start craving sugars. So the more deficient, the more cravings we're going to have for those bad carbs, such as refined sugar and processed carbs. And of course, good fats. We need good fats for our brain to function. Our brain is actually 60% fat by weight, and it's saturated fat at that. So we need good fat, and we need good saturated fat in the right amounts in order to support brain function. And we shouldn't be scared of that. And there's more to the gut-brain connection than just specific compounds that you're getting from food. So here I have a picture of the gut-brain axis. So on top you have your brain, the brain in your head, and on the bottom and in the middle, that's your digestive system and your gut. And those are the bacteria that's in your gut on the bottom. And that's called your second brain. Have you ever experienced that familiar feeling of butterflies in your stomach when you're nervous or you're really excited about something, right? Or how about that gut feeling that you can't quite describe, but you know that you should follow and that it's right? Well, this is the gut-brain connection in action, or our second brain. They are connected, and they're connected physiologically by the vagus nerve, which is this really large nerve that runs from the base of our gut to the base of our brain. And that's a channel that runs between them. But did you know that even if this vagus nerve is severed, so not connected, your gut, or your second brain, would still function on its own without the help of your brain in your head? How amazing is that? It's crazy. There's so much that we're learning about it, and this is all pretty new stuff. So you are 10 times more bacteria than you are human cells. Did you know that one? We are essentially a superorganism. we're more bacteria than we are human if we're looking at the amount of DNA in our bodies. And our commensal bacteria, so the bacteria that lives inside and outside of our bodies, they have a symbiotic relationship with us, and they have a lot to do with our health. And if any of you have been paying attention to some new health studies and articles that have been out there, there's a lot of talk about this, about the gut-brain connection and about your gut bacteria. So our gut bacteria also relates a lot with our mood and our emotion. So let's take a look at that. What's really cool is I found this image online. This is a snapshot of our gut bacteria. How cool is this? So this is actually inside of our gut. I mean, it looks like candy on top of a piece of wood or something, but that's our gut bacteria. That's the environment inside of us. Pretty cool. But let's take a look a little bit more closely at what studies have been finding about the gut-brain connection. So the second brain, which is also called the enteric nervous system, uses more than 40 neurotransmitters. That's just like the brain. And in fact, 95% of our body's serotonin, the serotonin that I've been talking about this entire time, it's found in our gut. So most of the serotonin in our body, 95% of it, or probably more, is found in our gut, and it's produced by the bacteria in our gut. So this brings another level to the confusion. But there are now several studies with intriguing evidence that show the probiotics can affect the brain. So one study even showed anxiety reduction in human volunteers and mice with the administration of 2 different strains, and they used Lactobacillus helveticus and B. longum. So those are just 2 that they looked at. Again, if you want to do your own research, I encourage you to go onto PubMed and check certain research studies out like that. But here's another one that takes a look at this, and it's been stated that dysfunction of the microbiome. So the microbiome is essentially our environment that includes our cells, and our commensal bacteria. So it's been stated that the dysfunction of the microbiome, brain-gut axis, has been implicated in stress-related disorders such as depression, anxiety, and irritable bowel syndrome, or IBS, and neurodevelopmental disorders such as autism. So I had one client not too long ago, we'll call her Amy, and she suffered from severe anxiety all of her life, as well as weight fluctuations. And I'm talking about big weight fluctuations. And she was on anti-anxiety medication for years and came to me for other reasons. She was trying to lose weight sustainably, and she couldn't. So I suspected there was a lot of imbalance going on in her gut, and we decided to implement an elimination diet where she got off gluten, dairy, and sugar, among other things that were specified for her. We also brought in things specific to her deficiencies, so things that we knew that she needed more of, and also probiotics. The pounds melted away. She didn't even have to try. She gained a ton of energy, and surprising benefit showed up for her. Her anxiety reduced significantly, and she was able to lower her medication in our time working together. And that was just a period of 3 months. So this is how cool and important this stuff really is. And there's clear evidence that the health of your gut has a profound impact on the health of your brain and your mood. So how do we ensure that we can make these changes? Well, let me tell you how. All right, so first up is eliminating processed food. So I've talked about this already, and I talked about it a lot, but I can't say it enough. What does this even mean? I know that when I went gluten-free, for example, a while back, I thought that I was eating healthy, but really most of it ended up being processed foods with tons of sugar in it. So processed foods is broadly anything in a package. And more specifically, it's anything with a long, unpronounceable ingredient list. And even more rigidly, it contains processed, hydrogenated vegetable oils, preservatives, dyes, and sugars. And processed food is processed so that it's portable and shelf stable. So that means that it's lasting a long time and bacteria doesn't want to eat it. If bacteria doesn't want to eat it, it probably isn't a good idea to eat it yourself. Refined carbs and flour. So flour, the way that most people eat it, is bad for our health for many reasons, but it promotes unstable blood sugar. So remember that hypoglycemia I talked about? It contains genetically modified grains most of the time. And it contains also pesticides. If it's non-organic, then it's going to contain chemicals in there. So in my practice, I focus on the ways that we can, in which unstable blood sugar can masquerade as other things. So remember, I made that connection between unstable blood sugar and anxiety. So helping first with food. When some people eat high glycemic index foods like bread, their pancreas is stimulated to release insulin at levels that end up plummeting blood sugar. So then you're getting that mountain and ditch, and it becomes a vicious cycle. We're also looking at allergens. So gluten, soy, corn, dairy, and others have been identified as allergenic foods for many people. And, what's interesting is, these foods we thought of like as being fairly healthy in the past, right? And I believe that there's a change in how these foods are being processed. So the nature of their processing, hybridization, and genetic modification. So they're different foods than they were years ago. And then sugar, of course, we talked a ton about sugar. Most processed foods have a ton of sugar in it. You just want to look at it and play detective. They're hidden in various names. And so you want to pay attention to that. And then conventional animal products. So if you're consuming conventional animal products, then you're consuming antibiotics, period. So you're getting most of your antibiotics in your diet from conventional animal products. And that's destroying your good bacteria in your gut, which we just looked at and has a profound effect on our mood. So you want to pay attention to that. All right, but we do want to eat lots of whole foods and colorful vegetables and lots of greens, and focus on lower glycemic fruits and starches. So the ones that don't have as much sugar, but more so just focusing on eating whole real foods. And natural fats. So we not only need the polyunsaturated fats and omega-3s, which are found in fish and fish oil, and these have been known for years to help with emotional imbalance because they fight against inflammation. They're highly inflammatory, but we need other good fats too. So for example, grass-fed beef is not actually a saturated fat. It's actually primarily a monounsaturated fat. Why? Because it's eating grass versus conventional beef, which is eating a ton of grain and getting hormones and all that kind of stuff. And that's saturated fat. So regardless, there are some good sources of saturated fat, and those are critical to cell membrane health and brain, which is, remember, 60% fat by weight. So some great examples are coconut oil and grass-fed butter, which are great saturated fat. And probiotics. So there's ample animal research and preliminary human trials to support the ability of gut microbes, so our bacteria in our gut, to influence our mood and behavior. So we want to help those suckers out and repopulate with good bacteria. And fermented foods is a great way to do it. And throughout most traditional cultures, there's always been some form of fermented food. For example, lacto-fermented sauerkraut, pickles, kimchi. And we also want to make sure that we're protecting ourselves from toxic exposure in order to protect our bacteria that's inside of our body. And like I mentioned before, we want to focus on the pastured and organic animal products in wild fish versus conventional. Okay, so this is a lot of information, and now we're at the time we're going to hit the 7 ways to regulate your mood, because I want to leave some time for a Q&A here. So let me run through this. First is to eat a rainbow of whole organic foods every day. So bringing in high nutrient dense foods and fiber. This is going to stabilize your blood sugar and be super supportive with all those nutrients for your brain. So your action steps, and I want you to write the action steps down here. Try to fill at least half of your plate with vegetables and include at least 3 colors in there. So try to do that for a week, filling your plate with half veggies, and see how you feel. Okay, a lot of people roll their eyes when I bring this one up because people love their caffeine. But any exploration into food and mood needs to take into account that two-way relationship, okay, and include the psychological aspect behind what we are choosing to eat. And many of us choose to consume lots of caffeine for one reason or another, besides the fact that it's addictive. But caffeine is found in tea, coffee, cola drinks, chocolate. It's probably the most widely used behavior modifying drug in the world. Yes, it's a drug. And we often choose to drink it if we're feeling tired or irritable or to boost concentrations. Now, there are benefits to moderate coffee consumption. I'm not against it, but too much caffeine can cause symptoms like anxiety, nervousness, and depression, especially for some people. So you want to try weaning off the coffee instead of going cold turkey. So I encourage you to experiment and try substitutes like Dandy Blend is one that's a really great substitute made from dandelion root. There's green tea and there's herbal teas like rooibos that you can use as well. Okay, and you want to start your day right with a mood stabilizing breakfast that includes healthy fats and fiber and protein. So like these pictures, eggs with greens, a smoothie with healthy fats like avocado or coconut oil, or a sweet potato hash with some grass-fed beef or lamb sausage. You can even make your own porridge like chia seed pudding, which is great for taking to the office or traveling. And a healthy breakfast at around the same time every day is going to help stabilize your blood sugar and your mood for the rest of the day. And so it curbs hunger, so you're less likely to have those cravings. So write that down, get that breakfast in. And probiotics. So improve your gut with fermented foods. We can get natural probiotics through foods like sauerkraut, as I mentioned, pickles, kimchi, and even yogurt, so organic yogurt. Try introducing these foods to your plate on a regular basis. And instead of counting calories and skipping meals, focus and pay more attention to the ingredients and sugar content. So the nutrient density of the food. What matters most is nutrient density. So you get the most bang for your buck, so to speak. Crash dieting and skipping meals not only messes with your metabolism, but it dysregulates your mood and blood sugar too. So eating at regular times every day and focus on clean eating for improved mood and health. And eating an earlier dinner will also help improve sleep, which is, oh my God, it's good for so many things, but it regulates your mood and your blood sugar. And I'm sorry I'm talking fast, but I want to get through all of this for you guys, and I want to respect your time. So number 6, you got to slow down, speaking of which, and chew your food. So luckily I'm not eating right now because we're going quite fast. And this may sound like a silly one, but I can't tell you how many times this comes up with my clients. How you eat and who you are being when you eat matter tremendously. They matter just as much as what you are eating. And here's why. When you slow down, are mindful of your food and eating, and chew slowly, you activate what's called the parasympathetic nervous system. That's the rest and digest state, and that's the state we want to be in most of the time. What this does is it activates the secretion of saliva and digestive enzymes into the stomach to help digest the food properly. Your cortisol levels are normalized, your blood sugar is normalized, everything is in perfect condition for you to eat. When we eat on the go, or in a state of stress or scarfing down food in the car, we're not only not digesting the food properly, but we are creating more stress on our body, leading to hormonal dysregulation and mood swings. So slow down. And finally, number 7, we want to go easy on the alcohol. And this is another eye roller that I get too, because it's like, especially in the holidays, Vanessa, how can you tell us to easy on the alcohol? Here's the thing. Alcohol worsens any kind of mood disorder. Alcohol is a depressant and it acts as a magnifier. So negative feelings are amplified. And sometimes what appears to be major depression clears up after abstinence from alcohol. Even moderate drinking over the weekend can lead to oxidative stress, which means increased inflammation, which we know is bad for the brain. So we want to decrease that amount. And alcohol may make us feel relaxed initially, but what it does is really diminish the quality of sleep because of the blood sugar spike that occurs at night. And believe me, it occurs, even if you think that you're sleeping okay. So the amount of alcohol that's appropriate for an individual is really unique to that person. So you have to test for yourself. Some are good with 1 glass of wine a day. Others are better with 1 glass a week. I'm more in that camp. And some people should eliminate it completely. So if you do drink alcohol, stay clear of the sugar-laden mixed drinks and always drink with a meal to slow the spike, and add some water so that you're getting rehydrated. So quick recap, we looked at what mood swings, depressions, anxiety are, what's wrong with the American diet. We dove into hypoglycemia, food intolerance, neurotransmitter dysfunction, and gut dysbiosis, which is a ton of information, but those big culprits as it relates to mood swings, depression, and anxiety. And also the 7 simple ways to regulate your mood with nutrition. So you're now armed with great information that you guys can take off with and lead a healthy life. And for some of you, this is enough. But remember that knowledge is only part of the equation, and it takes consistent action to realize these changes for yourself. So finding that right consistent support and taking action to create these healthy habits that will help you feel good now and bring you lifelong benefit. And the key to success is really having the right kind of support. So I encourage each and every one of you to seek that out for yourself, to set yourself up for success. And there's no better way to gain support and take action than to be a part of a community. And so today, I'd love to invite each and every one of you into our community here at Unveiled Wellness. Starting this new year, we are doing a Unveil 30-Day Healthy Eating Challenge. And so that starts January 5th. This is an awesome way for you to get support while creating healthy habits that last and seeing real-time results. So the focus here is on eating foods that nourish the body, so clean eating, and helping you discover your healthy blueprint. We focus on eating whole foods and eliminating foods that could be causing inflammation, resistant weight loss, and so much more. But by eating clean, we're able to heal, feel awesome, and see amazing results. So if you're interested in joining us this new year and jumpstarting your healthy lifestyle, I encourage you to take part and take action. This community is super supportive. It's going to be fun. There's 2 levels of the challenges you can choose from, and here's what's included. This is what you're going to get. So there's a guidebook that really leads the way throughout the entire experience and answers your questions. There's a recipe book with tons of yummy recipes. I have weekly meal plans for you for each of the 4 weeks, along with shopping lists, so you don't have to think about that stuff. There's also weekly email support from me and a private Facebook group. So you guys can join in and get support from everybody else and myself, and that's where I'll be doing coaching, and I'll also be sending you bonus handouts and cheat sheets and tips and all that kind of stuff. So this is what you're gonna get, and if you guys are interested in joining us, we are so happy to have you. And your gift for being here live is this. You guys get complimentary 45-minute private food for your mood breakthrough session with me. So this is usually a $95 value. I'm talking to you guys one-on-one where we're diving into your personal needs, and this can be used before, during, or after the challenge. And then also you're getting an additional 2-week meal plan with additional recipes that are not in that recipe book. So all of that, if you guys are interested and you're into it, it expires midnight. So all you need to do is go and click on that link that's available for you if you're on my website. Otherwise, use this URL at unveiledyou.com/unveil30day challenge. And if you register today by midnight, then shoot me an email at hello@unveiledyou.com to let me know, and then we'll set all that up for you. So that's what I have for you guys. And even if you're not interested in the challenge, I want you to start your own challenge. And I want you to tell me, what is one thing that you will try this week to improve your mood? So of course, here is my information if you guys have any questions at all. And we're going to take a look to see if there are any questions from the participants. So now if you have any questions, you can go ahead and shoot them right over. Okay, somebody asked if they go online and they purchase. Yes, all you have to do is go onto the website and register. If you're a new challenger, you select new challenger. If you're returning challenger, because we did this last year and it was so much fun, then you select returning challenger. And then you go through the whole process, and once you're going to get an immediate download of all your materials, and then be sure to email me to let me know that you were live on the webinar with me. Okay, everyone. So I'll go back to that just so you can take a look at the link again. There you go at the bottom. But if you have any questions as it relates to anything that you learned today, feel free to shoot me an email. I'm here. I am available to answer all of your questions, and I'm really excited that I got to do this hangout with you guys. So I hope all of you have a beautiful holiday season and a very happy new year. And I hope to see you guys in January with the challenge. But otherwise, go off with your own challenge, and I'm supporting you all the way. So thanks again for joining me, everyone, and have a lovely evening. Bye.